Ajoy, thank you so much for coming on the show. It means a lot to have you on here. You are the CEO of Cin7. You recently acquired a company called Intoro, which is an AI-driven sales forecasting provider, which I want to talk about. But can you tell me about how you became the CEO of Cin7 and the whole journey of where you are today?
Okay, awesome. Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Clint. Excited to be part of this, and good day to all of your listeners as well. My journey, I've been a software product guy all my professional life. I joined right now. I'm at Cin7, as you said. I joined Microsoft and spent about 10 years working on some of the technical products, .NET and Visual Studio. These are essentially tools and languages developers around the world use to build applications like Cin7. So that was my, I guess, cup of tea. Spent a lot of time in that domain. I've written half a dozen books on that. I'm not saying that to brag about it, but
Oh,
illustrate,
it's
I got really
incredible.
deep into
You should brag about that. That's a big
that.
deal.
Yeah, deep into that space. No, but if you calculate the time spent on writing and rewriting, I think authoring a technical book pays lower than minimum wage. So probably not a great ROI from an economical standpoint, but the gratification you get from having published and shared some of that stuff, it's worth a lot more than that. Spent the first half of my 10 years at Microsoft in that technical role, and then shift into more of the business and the strategy, engaging with customers and partners. Really grew a lot in that space. I mean, that kind of got me understanding the other side of the business, so to speak. It's one thing to build a product and the technical stuff behind it, but how do you think about the customer pain point, the partner strategy? How do the partners think about the products? So really got me a good exposure to it. And then left Microsoft after being there 10 years, joined a startup called Acumatica. It was a startup back then. And we built a cloud ERP. ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Planning, a boring back office software, if you want to think about that way, but super critical, right? If ERP goes down, customers are like, really upset. So we spent a lot of time, thinking about customer business processes, the data. How do we make sure customers can benefit from it? So did that for about 8 years. When I left Acumatica, I was the executive VP of product and chief strategy officer. Really gave me a lot of chance to understand the nuances of the different industries, what their business needs are from an application standpoint, and that's what set me up for this role at Cin7. When people ask me, I always say Microsoft is my second graduate school and Acumatica was my trade school. Right, put a lot of learnings into practice. We had to really build a lot of things from the ground up. So I'm here at Cin7. I've been here for about 18 months. 15 of those 18 months, I was the chief product officer looking at our product offering, and then recently took on as a CEO.
So it's a cloud-based inventory management software company. Tell us like use cases. Who are your customers? How do you get customers?
Yep. So our customers are essentially anybody that sells product, right? So if you have, if you've gone to Amazon and ordered, who doesn't these days, right? Everybody.
Yeah.
Those product sellers are essentially looking at a ways to keep track of how many orders are they selling, and in what time frame. What do we need to get done to ship it in a timely manner? Do I have enough stock? What's my holiday going to look? Do I need to get replenishment done so I have enough stock to go sell that? All the way down to companies that actually sell online and in a retail store with the point of sale systems, companies that sell primarily to wholesalers, right? We have a lot of customers that sell to big retail outlets and hospitals and hotels and so on. So a lot of the B2B is what it's called. And then also manufacturers, companies that produce their goods, produce as in they could just be doing simple assembly and then ship it. For example, customer can buy 1,000 shampoos and 1,000 conditioners and create a bundle that's like 2 shampoo, 2 conditioner bundle. So that's assembly, right? And the customers that do full on manufacturing, they either do made to stock or made to order. Either they're producing cosmetics or apparels or furnitures. All of those customers, all of those industries rely on a system like Cin7, which offers that kind of the 360 view, if you will.
What does a typical day look like for you?
Well, it has changed over the years. So the reason now that I've got older kids, before my life was centered around the family and my kids and whatnot. So now, I'm an empty nester, so it's a little different schedule. Again, I would start by saying I'm sure you've heard others say this as well. I mean, there's no typical day, and that's true. And we are such a global organization. We have employees in our offices in 6 countries, employees in 8 or so countries. So there's always a little bit of a dynamic nature to the day, because sometimes you start pretty early with talking to folks from other regions, and then you end the late night calls with folks in New Zealand and Dubai and Sri Lanka and India. So there's lots of variability. For me, the foundational thing is we'll probably talk more about this. As a CEO, I obviously have to let go of my CPO thing as well. I still am a product guy at heart, so I think about product a lot. There is not a week goes by without me playing in the product. That's super important to me. And so my day typically consists of lots of meetings. And most of them, I'll tell you, we're super good at this. I don't go to meetings just to be there and listen. If I had to learn something and listen, yes, that's great. But if I don't have anything to contribute or to take away, I typically do not show up to those meetings. And that's something that we're trying to get everybody to feel comfortable about. So a lot of our meetings are very productive. There are meetings that we run, and in fact, my COO has actually done a great job. Where there are meetings that we run that we tag them as inform only. We're not expecting you to come and participate. No, we want to inform you of some topics. It's super important for all of you to hear, whether it's 5 people or the 500 people. We just do this very specifically. But other meetings, we expect people to collaborate and solve whatever we're trying to solve for. So a lot of meetings, it varies depending on the audience. I've got meetings with my team members, my leadership team. I tend to meet with the customer on an average once a week. Some weeks it's more than that. So if I don't go talk to a customer in a week, that's usually a pretty odd week for me. And that's super important, right? We cannot be living in a vacuum. Engaging with customers, understanding how they're using the product, what the pain point, all that is super important.
And so, how do you decide where to spend your time each day? As you get into the office and you've got all these meetings, but as CEO, there's so many things that are thrown at you, so many things you can work on. How do you? I guess what I'm asking is how do you prioritize your day?
Yeah. I mean, there's no great answer. I'm not here to tell you that I figured it out. Okay. And I'm super organized with things that I care about. Okay. And I say it that way because I'm also super unorganized about things that I actually couldn't care less. And if you talk to my wife and kids, they'll tell you they'll have a list ready. But the things that I care about, I innately are super organized. Simple things like people always say, "Man, you seem to be working a lot." I actually don't, but I'm very responsive. That's something that I carry pretty seriously. So responding to things, when people reach out to me, I take it super seriously. And if I have a response, if I see it, I have no reason to put it on hold. I just, whether it's text, whether it's Slack, whether it's email, if I have time and I'm looking at it, and Clint sent me a note saying, Ajoy, can you be on this podcast? If I have an answer, I'll say yes, I am. Or I'm like, Clint, I cannot commit to it, I'll tell you in a week. So I think that helps me stay on top of things. That's number one. Number two, I'm a practitioner, not a preacher, right? So for me, that's super important to be able to know the things. So I tend to learn. And it's a super, it's a crazy thing to strike a balance, because you don't want to get into a micromanaging situation. But at the same time, you don't want to be too disconnected from what's going on in the business. So for me, the prioritization, there's no magic formula. It's about things that matters to you, things that you think is going to drive impact to the business, to the customers, to the partners. I try to prioritize them over anything else. And naturally, the day gets organized like that. My EA does a great job of making sure those meetings are prioritized over other conversations. And then same thing in terms of me spending time. One of the things I'm also learning, Clint, this is my first time as a CEO, and I'm 3 months in, so I'm not here to say I've figured it all out. One of the things one of my mentor recently told me is, it's important that you as a CEO stop thinking about today a lot. Start thinking about tomorrow and the future, right? You don't want to be always running what's next, what's next. You got to think about what's the future. What are we in 2 3 years? What are we going to be in? From an industry standpoint, from a customer standpoint. So I tend to block out and spend some time reading about stuff that's happening in the industry and so on.
What reading recommendations would you have for us? Is there, I mean, aside from your books, and we'll put those in the links for sure, but what reading recommendations would you have for us? What does a typical reading week, month, day look like for you?
Yeah, I know my books are pretty dated. I don't think anybody should be buying it. So if you really want it, please go for it. But I don't think the technology has changed so much. since those came out. It's a mix of things, right? I don't have any specific podcast that I follow or newsletter that I read vigorously. There are a few, but it's not something that I go back and watch and listen and read. From one of the things that I actually said, I don't know if it's super common now these days, but the social media, actually, there's so much good thing to learn about. Like I follow a lot of folks on Twitter, and there's so many things that's going on that keep me up to date with what's happening in latest and greatest. In our business, like our customers, I told you about this, Clint, like the industry is far and wide. We have customers in fashion and apparel. We have customers in beauty and cosmetics. We have customers in food and beverage. So I follow some of those clients accounts too and influencers in those areas to understand what is happening there. What are some of the key innovations that's going on? Just to have that understanding top of mind. I read books. I actually never read one book. I read many books. It's because I maybe it's to do with my attention span. So I usually got a couple of books that I'm reading, at the same time. Right at the moment, I'm actually reading something or very finance oriented, largely because of my kids have been super, influencing me super much, very much on that direction. So I'm reading this book called Caesar's Palace Coup. This is about the big takeover that happened between the Caesar's management and Apollo. I'm just second chapter in. It's fascinating stuff, on the leverage buyout and so on. And I'm also getting through a book called More Money Than God. Super fascinating to understand about the inner workings of all that. So that's what I'm reading. I wouldn't recommend that to anybody. And Izzy was asking me as we were talking about the books. That couple of the books that I really recommend to people when they come in and say, "Hey, what would you recommend?" One of them is a book called Crucial Conversations. I don't know if you have heard about it, read it.
Oh yeah,
Really
yeah, it's a great
fascinating
book.
book. I actually use it as a reference manual. I've bought probably 10 copies and I've given it to friends and family. Maybe there's a subtle message there, but it's such an important book. It constantly reminds me of a lot of stuff in terms of how we think about conversations and the perspectives you need to have. So that's the one good book. And then the other couple that I usually refer to people is one is Shoe Dog. This is Phil Knight's book, Nike's founder. Really fascinating book. There's so much in anybody and everybody can learn from it. And then the third book is, Bob Iger. I'm not a big fan of him, but the book, The Ride of a Lifetime. Really fascinating book. There's some couple of good examples of leadership transition and trying to get people to do what you want to do without overly coming on top of and say, I am the CEO, you will do this, right? And how do you change that mindset, get people to buy into your idea so they can execute with a lot of passion? So there are lots of good takeaways from books like that.
How are you thinking about artificial intelligence, and how are you integrating that into your company? I'm sure that's kind of been a big topic for your company and for your customers, investors, clients. I mean, literally everyone in the
Everyone.
world over the past 2 to 3 years, and even beyond that. How are you thinking about it?
Absolutely. So there is so much hype about AI, Clint, right? Everybody talks about it. And I think to some extent, I think there's a lot of companies, especially technology companies, are being a little too crazy about calling everything AI, right? So the way we think about this is, in fact, we're going to publish a paper on this, and I'm going to cover this in one of the keynotes that I'm doing in a month or so. We think about this and we call it AI with purpose, right? It's not just technology for the sake of technology. It's actually not that exciting. Like I get carried away with tech too. No, I mean, of course, guilty as charged. But when you think about in taking AI and putting it into action, we are thinking about what does it mean for our customers. What are those killer use cases that actually benefits from AI or even machine learning that we can derive value to our customers? So, one of the things we talked about, it's true for the supply chain industry and it's true for us. I use this term called we are data rich, insights poor. Okay, data is good, but data alone doesn't cut it. It's so much noise. Like, how do I get the signal that I need to know? It's like, think about this: when you're driving in a car, if the dashboard showed every metric that you can possibly get from the car. Oh, your cooling fluid is this, your car temperature is this, your gas tank is this, your tire inflation is this, you'll be like super distracted. The main thing you want to know is like, hey, how fast am I going, right? That's a key insight that you're super super important. When you come to a point, you park the car, you want to know that the car is parked or you actually brake. What is that important insight you need to know at the time with the context and the intent? So that's the challenge we're trying to tackle, and that's why we actually mentioned this at the beginning. We acquired a company called Inventoro, and that's one of the theses behind that acquisition is exactly this. Let's look at use cases that matter for our customers, and let's figure out if there's a technology or a solution or AI that can help us with that.
In your opinion, what are the three most necessary traits for a leader to possess in order to be successful?
Oh wow, great question. One, I think being a good listener, right? You don't want to come at a mindset of like, yeah, I got this figured out, right? So I think that's super important. Second, for me, like I said earlier, practice what you preach. In fact, practice more than you preach, right? And that's super important. Otherwise, you get super disconnected from what the reality is. You don't understand what the customer pain points are. I think that's important. The third thing that I hold is true to my art, it's kind of related to the practice comment, is like no task is too small, no task is too big. Just because you are a CEO doesn't mean you're not doing a sales call, you're not getting on a support conversation and dealing with the customer escalation. And I honestly say that, that's not just true for leaders. In fact, I ask about this type of stuff in interviewing candidates coming into Cin7 or any recruitment I've done. Like, what is people's approach towards tasks? Like, you don't want to be saying, hey, I will only do these things, I won't do that's beneath me. Or no, I'm actually scared, I won't go in front of the board and talk about it. We don't need to be like, all tasks can be accomplished by us as long as you have the passion and the desire to go do it. So those are the three that I would say are at least the way I think about it from the current place.
What do you know now that you wish you had known at the beginning of your career?
How much time you got? Well, I think there are a couple of things, right? So one of them is I always say this, and I hold this principle close to my heart, and this is something that I learned along the way, which is it's 10% what happens, 90% how you react to it. Okay, it's easy to look at, oh my gosh, there's a bug in the product, or we had a support issue, or we lost the deal, or whatever, right? Stuff happens, guys. That's why we are in the job that we are in, right? It's 10% what happened, it's 90% how you react. And that is super, it's very, very hard. In fact, we were dealing with an escalation last week, and I was reminding myself, Ajoy, stop. You don't need to be in a spin mode. You don't need to go run around crazy. You don't need to be thoughtful. What happened is what happened. Now what do we do? I think it's super important. I know it probably sounds common sense, but sometimes that's where we fail. We don't think about this way. We just get carried away in the moment. To me, I think that's one of the key lessons, and that's why I don't get stressed a lot. Not that I never get stressed, but it takes things that I don't have control on. It's usually very hard for me to get stressed, but I only get stressed when I feel like I could have done something differently and I'm not doing it. And this attitude of like, it's 10% what happened, 90% how you react to it, help me keep things in perspective. There's something bigger than what we're doing, and it's okay. Let's go learn from it. Let's react positively, get everybody back on track as soon as possible.
Yeah, what are some products, apps, tools, things like that that you use every single day that you like couldn't live without?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big fan of, like I said, Twitter. I read a lot, both on the sports front, but as well as on the business commercial side of things. We use a lot of products from a collaboration perspective. I'm a big fan of OneNote. The product has got a lot of, it's not the best, greatest product ever, but going back to my comment about I'm organized, I actually have notes for every conversation that I've had. It's very cryptic, so people can probably understand what I'm typing, but I tried to take some bullets, not transcribing everything, but what are the key takeaways? What are the things that I need to follow up on? To the early question, there's so much goes on. Like, and the context switching is also super super obvious and happens a lot during the day, from sales to marketing to engineering to product and this. So that keeps me organized. And one of the things that I've been working on since I became a CEO is to make sure I meet with every employee in the company. So I'm almost 90% way there, right? So I keep essentially a note of the employees that I've met in the last 90 days. And when I meet in the team and I recognize them on stuff that they shared with me, that really makes someone's day. And I think it's super good to connect with people at that level. So I use OneNote a lot. Obviously, all the boring business tools. I'm on the Zoom a lot. I like Slack. We use Slack for collaboration, so we use that a lot. So those are some of the common tools.
How do you stay grounded? How do you maintain your mental health?
Stay grounded, spend time with your kids. They'll tell you how stupid you are sometimes, and they're super honest about it too. And no, I'm fortunate. I've got great relationship with my kids, and we spend a lot of time talk about business and whatnot. Right from when they were very young, when they were like 5, and then we drive back from school, I ask them, "How was school today?" They go, "Good." And I go, "Okay, that's not the response." And then when they ask me how was work, I can tell them, "Yeah, today it wasn't great. I had this conflict. I couldn't figure it out." And my wife would be like, "Why are you doing this?" Well, they asked me a question. I want to give them the answer. So, and that extended on, that helped me build a great relationship. And they'll tell you, right? I mean, it's the honesty that keeps you grounded, in my opinion. That it's that, and then it's honestly the practitioner mentality that I talked about, that helps you understand what you don't know as well. When you try to put yourself in a sales conversation, in a product conversation, working with engineers on stuff, you understand how much you need to learn and go forward with. So I think that's super important for all of us. Doesn't matter what level you are in, what's your title. Title, I mean, in the long scheme of things, it doesn't matter. It's like how much energy and support system that you have built along the way. From a mental health perspective, like I said, I'm generally a very optimistic person. Like, I dream big a lot. It's very hard for me to fall asleep because I'm always thinking about 10 things that I can go change. And I think that's a great motivator, right? I think that keeps you driving all the time. And I'm also a people person, so the COVID, staying work from home, was a bit of a hard thing for me. And we ended up actually traveling a lot during COVID. We were one of those families, took all the measures, but we traveled responsibly, did a lot of outdoors, camping and stuff. And when obviously it was okay to do. So to me, I think spending time with people, and that's why I travel a lot. I go spend time with people. I work from Seattle. We have offices, like I said, in many different locations. I go spend time with them. Whenever I'm traveling, meeting with my team, the energy that I've derived from it, the meetings that I have with our customers, the positivity that they share, the potential their business has, and how much they derive value from Cin7, all of that, like, fires me up.
What are you thinking about the current macroeconomic environment and our current, like, I mean, we're obviously in a political environment. As we talk, there's actually a first presidential debate
Tonight.
happening tonight. Like, how are you feeling just about state of the world from a macroeconomic perspective? Because you have to think about those types of things now as CEO, even beyond just kind of what's happening inside of your company.
Oh, 100%. It's super important because we got to make some responsible decisions about the growth and the people and all that stuff. So we're constantly talking about all of those topics. There is a bit of, obviously, I mean, how can you not miss this whole big doom and gloom, right? Inflation is this, interest rate is that, and all that. There is definitely, a shift in the way customers, like, when we think about Cin7 as a business, we were one of those companies that was fortunate, but we were also positioned. The previous team did a great job of getting the company ready, and the team, as we came out of the COVID initial phase, there was a big push with retail and commerce. I mean, we all went through this transition of ordering everything online, buy online, pick up in store, and curbside pickup, and delivery at door, all that fun stuff, and that drove a lot of business, and we were super super successful with that. And then as we did the transition, it kind of came to back to normalcy in 2023. That means customers are taking a little bit longer time to make the decision. Their buying cycle is different. Their buying behavior is different. So we've already factored a lot of that into our modeling. And in 2024, particularly given its election year, there is always a bit of uncertainty. But what I can tell you, Clint, like I said, I spend a lot of time with our customers. Our customers, some of them are like startups. These are companies that had a great idea. Hey, I've got this phenomenal idea for creating a jewelry, and I'm going to start off doing it from my garage. I have success. Now I'm opening up my store, a Shopify store. I'm selling on Amazon, Etsy, Fair, whatever, right? And then we have customers that actually have already found the product market fit. Companies that actually do an amazing startup, and then boom, now they're selling like 5, 10, 15, $20 million worth of product. And then we have customers that have accelerated, they have scale. They're doing $50 million, $100 million, $200 million in revenue. The common theme that I hear from all of them, even to date, like I was just talking to a customer last week, every consistently, I would say like 95% plus of those customers, none of them tells me that the business is going to shrink this year. The business is going to be slowing down next year. They come out and tell me, I think we're going to double our business by the end of the year. We're going to have like 3x growth next year. You wouldn't believe, there's some customer conversations that I walk out thinking I'm ready to punch the wall. I'm like, come on, show it to me, give me, I'm ready. It's amazing to see that these are folks with a lot of resiliency, grit, passion to what they do, and that's what drives me. Like to your question about like how do you keep motivating yourself? I mean, our platform enables that. We have customers that come in at a really young stage to Cin7 at $2 million, less than $1 million in revenue, and then they grow up to become a brand 50, 60, $100 million. Seeing that, it's phenomenal. There is no other happiness in life than watching our customers succeed using our platform. The fact that knowing we played a small role in their success, I think that's like great. So back to the macro climate, yes, there is macro slowness, there is some doom and gloom, but in reality there's a lot of positivity, there's a lot of optimism, and that's what we are driving towards.
I love that. Finally, we end every interview with the same question, and that is at CEO.com. We believe the chances one gives is just as important as the chances one takes. When you hear that, who gave you a chance to get you to where you are today?
Yeah. Actually, I got chance. I got given chance from many people. Like I talked about my career progression. I was a technical guy, or actually in more of a technical product role, and I shifted into more of the business and strategy. So the leader, the manager that took a chance there, that opened up the opportunities for me. I wouldn't be here today without that bet. If that manager looked at me and go like, no, you're a technical guy, I don't think you can do this job of interacting with partners, defining programs that are like massive global scale, my path would have been completely different, right? The appreciation and the understanding that I built in that role made a huge difference to what I am. So that's one. Second is like when I got my MBA, I went to the Ohio State University. I'm a big Buckeye fan, OH for any Buckeye fans out there. And that journey, like I had several professors, one of them particularly, and he helped me understand the numbers behind the stories, right? And I love telling stories, but the numbers are super important too, right? And that's where I think honestly today I think of myself as a product guy, but I'm a very sales driven, numbers focused product guy. I want to make sure we build a product that our customers will appreciate and understand, not something we just build because it's fancy and cool. So those are two examples where somebody didn't have to. They didn't have to take a bet. They didn't have to spend the extra hours and time, and they did. And that's so at that point in time, you don't realize it. That's the beauty of all of this. Like when that happens, you go like, yeah, cool. Thank you so much. Thanks for taking the time, and you walk away. But then you look back from 5, 10, 15 years and you go like, my gosh, that was a fork in the road, and they helped you take the right path, and you are where you are as a destination because of those smaller investment that somebody made with you.
Ajoy, what a pleasure to talk to you. Congratulations on everything you're doing. Seriously, I'm blown away by it, and you're an incredible leader. Thank you for spending the time with us.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me. Great questions. I loved it. Now I want to go listen to some of your other CEO interviews to see what they said.
Perfect. I love it. Okay. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care. Bye.